Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Ginger Powell, and I'm with the Northwest Tennessee Workforce Board, and you are joining us for our third webinar of a four-part series called Virtually Speaking for Workforce Development. The first of our workforce webinars was on our Premier Virtual, which is a job fair platform. The second was on apprenticeships, and today is on building a young talent workforce. And our last one will be in December, and the focus will be on utilizing labor market information. If you have missed any of these or have to hop off today and want to catch back up later, you can see them in our library on our website at nwtnjobs.org, and those can be viewed anytime. It'll give you a link to our YouTube page where you can view previous and future webinars. Joining us today on the chat on our webinar is Sam Shamblin, and he is going to talk to us a little bit about generational differences and to statistics and just getting to know the young and youth workforce of today. Connie Stewart's also on the call. She is going to talk to us about the nuts and bolts of the work experience program. We have several employers who have utilized these programs who are also on the webinar today, and they're going to just share their testimonial. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. One thing I do want to mention early on is if you have questions throughout the webinar for any of our panelists, you can click on that chat box on your screen and just enter your questions in, and we will, at the conclusion of today's webinar, offer a question and answer session, and we'll go over all the questions that pop into the chat box during the webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam Shamblin with the Tennessee Department of Labor to give us a little bit of information on just generational differences and to kind of give you an introduction to the young and emerging workforce.
Morning, everybody. I'm going to go and share my screen. All right, my name is Sam Shamblin. I'm with the Dyersburg American Job Center and the Department of Labor, Tennessee Department of Labor. I'm going to go over generational differences in the workplace and how we work through them and work around them. Key differences in our generations are we were shaped by different world events in home environments. We have different sources of motivation, different communication styles, and different views and perspectives of the world around us. By 2025, it is shown that millennials will make up approximately 42% of the workforce. In fact, that's actually accelerating because of recent healthcare concerns. With COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of people in Generation X and the baby boomer generation retiring early or just not returning to work. On top of that, with millennials, you'll see around, I believe it was 25% of the male population of millennials aren't returning to work either as things progress. The baby boomer generation was shaped by events like the Cold War, Vietnam War, and the Civil Rights Movement. They grew up in nuclear households, which soon became disintegrated households because they have the highest rate of divorce amongst all the generations. Their motivations at work are company loyalty, teamwork, and duty. Their communication preferences are the most direct method available, so face-to-face, and if you don't have face-to-face, the closest analogous form you can offer after that. Their worldview is achievement comes after paying one's dues, and you must sacrifice in order to achieve success. The Generation X generation, they were shaped by the AIDS epidemic, the end of the Cold War, the dot-com boom, and the transition to the digital age. Their home environment, they were the latchkey generation. As kids, they were at home with no supervision. It was when two-income households started to become prevalent, and they have the lowest divorce rate. They're tied with millennials. They're also known as helicopter parents in adult life. They were very close with managing their kids and almost on the micromanaging level as the helicopter parent stereotype kind of shows. Fun fact, the millennials have a low divorce rate because they don't get married. The motivations of Generation X is work-life balance. They would like to balance what they get to do at home, what vacations they take, along with their work. And they have personal professional interests. They're portfolio workers. They work to build their skill sets and to have an overall well-rounded resume. Their communication, the most direct and efficient, just like the baby boomer generation. And their worldview, they favor diversity. They're quick to move from an employer if work balance doesn't meet their needs, and they're resistant to change if it affects their personal life. We got Xennials, which is that generation between Millennial and Generation X. They were the ones that saw the most change in the world because it went from the dot-com boom and dial-up internet to phones that run faster than most computers of that era. Grew up on MTV, analog phones, and then transitioned to internet and cell phones. They have a blended motivation because of that being an in-between generation of work-life balance, greater work meeting experiences, quality of management are things they look for. Communication, they are adaptable to a wide range of communication because they've experienced all the ranges of communication. And their motivations is they like challenge. They want growth and development, and they're more likely to leave if leadership is not good or work is not rewarding. Generation Y, also known as the Millennials. It's the generation I'm from and the one my dad likes to criticize the most. World events that the Millennial generation were shaped by is Columbine, 9/11, the internet, and the rise of social media. Um, Home life, we grew up in mixed step or blended households. There were, because Generation X and baby boomers had a lot of variety, we were shaped by households that had any variety of conditions. As parents, they were far more free ranging and encouraging, and independent behaviors and habits are much more apparent in the millennial generation. Motivation, quality of leadership, unique work experiences, rewarding work environments. What a millennial is looking for in the workplace is something that will help them grow because it's going to be such a large part of their life. They are looking for a little bit more in their work environment. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that top part of the pyramid is self-actualization. And when you spend so much time at work, a lot of millennials are looking for that self-actualization in work. They're looking for that contribution to society or that contribution to the world as a whole. Communication, millennials prefer IMs, texts, and emails. They're fast, they're quick, and generally impersonal and lack strong connection. And that's because we grew up in that more connected world, but less connected interpersonally. Worldview, they like challenges, growth and professional development, and again, most likely to leave a workplace if they don't like the changes environment or leadership. Generation Z, their world events are the post 9/11 conflicts, the ongoing war on terror, increased political polarization, access to technology from a young age. We see a lot of Generation Z growing up on tablets, growing up on the almost substitute parents and teachers in the form of technology. Their home environment was definitely free range. They grew up in two earner or single parent households and or blended families, so a lot of step families as well. Because of the two earner incomes or the single parent incomes and households, you see a lot of Generation Z that grew up in a daycare and then they spend most of their time at school before they come home and see their parents, and they might not see their parents. They might go home to grandma or another family member. So there's a lot of mobility in Generation Z as they grow up. Their motivations are diversity, personalization, individuality, and creativity. If you look at today's society and what we value the most and what we exalt in the media, we don't exalt the whole team that created a movie. We exalt that one actor or that one actress, that one performance. We don't exalt a whole team. We exalt a single quarterback, a star player. So when you look at Generation Z and millennials, they were raised around achievement base. They weren't raised around a work type mentality where you have to consistently perform every day, because the people that were exalted most in media and everywhere are the people who achieved the greatest amounts. And that's the same with school. That's the same with a lot of things that Millennials and Generation Z grew up with. Their favorite communication style is text or social media, messenger apps, and Snapchat. So they like a little more of that personalized message. They like to see a little bit more inclusivity with their messaging and their communication. Their worldview, they are self-identified as digital addicts. They don't work well with autocratic leaders, which is do as I say, not as I do. And they have a larger sense of world community. They see a lot more connection with everything around them, and that's because they're connected to the world at all times. They make up currently 20% of the total workforce as of 2020. Some barriers to work and communication between generations: stereotypes and meta-stereotypes, a lack of understanding on the differences in motivations and values, a lack of room for varied and open dialogue, understanding the differences in digital communication between generations, and understanding that in general work attitudes are around the same across the board. Life and environmental factors play a larger role in how a person participates and completes work. A stereotype in the workplace and communication is an assumption on how someone is, how they work, how they behave, how they show respect or how they are disrespectful. And a meta stereotype is what an individual thinks people think about them. It is found that both assumptions are typically inaccurate and skew how we work and communicate with people. For instance, Generation Y isn't necessarily motivated by financial incentive, and that's one of the most prevalent forms of incentive in the workplace. This difference in motivation can create a skewed and/or negative perception. As discussed, millennials look for that self-actualization at work because they spend so much time at work. So it's not necessarily the money that's involved, it's what they are contributing and how they get to contribute that factors in work incentives. In some cases, it was found that younger workers that tried to act more mature around their not necessarily superiors, but their supervisors, um, ended up causing a more negative perception than a positive one in the workplace. The older generations felt like, what is this kid trying to do? Why are they trying to act like this? If they had just approached with themselves. It is found that perception caused more intergenerational conflict than actual differences. So what people thought of each other caused more conflict than the existing differences. There were hardly any actual differences when it boiled down to which was what. Mitigating stereotypes and meta stereotypes can be completed through team building communications, icebreakers, team building exercises, and creating an environment conducive to open communication inclusivity. We live in an age where you get an email and there's usually not much rebuttal thereafter. With younger generations, they want to be able to buy into the work environment. They want to be able to contribute and grow with their company. Again, that's not necessarily a financial incentive, but that's also how we break down the stereotypes and meta stereotypes in the workplace. Understanding. There are a lot of differences in motivations and values in all generations, and it's largely influenced by the environment we grew up in. The feelings directed towards those different generations, work environment, the feelings directed towards, sorry, forgive me, I had a TBI moment, I was a paratrooper. The work attitudes and feelings directed towards work environments remain largely the same across the board. Everybody is looking to self-actualize, to become greater through their work environment, whether that's earning money or contributing to society. Generation X and baby boomers communicate differently in digital format using text, email, and messages that can often come across as curt to other generations. While Generation Y and Generation Z add things like emojis and different symbols to convey tone or emotion, which oftentimes comes across as unprofessional. So it's not necessarily a rudeness thing, it's a difference in communication styles. Despite the differences in digital communication styles and preferences, all generations receive, retain, and discuss better through interpersonal dialogue. talking face-to-face, or if you can't do face-to-face, doing something like a webinar or a web meeting. The best alternative, like I just mentioned, are virtual communications when everybody can see each other's faces. So no shutdown screens, facial expressions and body language show what we're actually trying to convey. Words and tone can often be misconstrued without that extra body language. Transparency is very valued between millennials and Generation Z, with decision-making processes, opportunities. That is an all-time high for Generation Y and Generation Z in building a candid and trust-based style work environment. Strict classical management communication, do this, that's it. It does not necessarily work so well with Generation Y and Z. So doing business with Generation Y and Z, the first and foremost thing, transparency, transparency, transparency. They want to be able to see the company values put on display. Generation Z wants to see a clear path to reaching their personal and individual goals, and that they will be able to achieve stability. Again, going back to we were very individually performance-based as a society. Generation Y really wants to reach their own individual goals. They're not necessarily concerned with achieving as a team. And that's just a matter of reframing things in the work environment and building everybody together. Social media, still a very underused tool between Generation Y and Z. 85% of all Generation Y and Z access the world through social media. And the way social media becomes more and more connected, you are seeing individuals applying for jobs, dating, all kinds of other things through 3 or 4 social media tools. It's not going to change. That's going to continue to accelerate. A prime example of great marketing to younger generations through social media, especially in West Tennessee, is Patent Plumbing, Heating, and AC. They put on live videos. They show their apprentices learning and building in the work environment. That generates interest in working for them because they can actually see the benefits, they can see the contributions, and they can see how the team works together. Generation Y and Z are more concerned with ethical, social, and moral implications of their work, with Generation Y leaning towards the idealistic and Generation Z being very much more realistic. Generation Y and Z are both more expectant of quick transactions, including in business applications and work progression. They both grew up in quicker serve environments. 76% of job seekers pass on applications that take more than 20 minutes to complete. In the Northwest Tennessee region in particular, 52% of all unemployed are Generation Y. That's not just unemployed, that's also those not participating in the workforce environment as a whole. And the majority of them are actually male, statistically speaking. If you look at our unemployment rate, it is sitting at 4.9% as a state as a whole, which means there aren't that many people collecting unemployment benefits at this time. It means there are people just refusing to participate in the workforce environment. Everybody knows a 25 to 34-year-old male that's couch surfing right now at mom and dad's house that's not necessarily working. They might be enrolled in one class in college. And the only way to reach them at this point in time, because it's video games, couch, and hardly getting out of the house, is going to be social media. Gonna go ahead and conclude. I'm sorry, I'm getting long-winded. Communication is key in working relationships across generations, particularly in person. It is also the quickest way to dispel stereotyping and meta-stereotyping in the workplace. Differences in work values and motivations do not have to have a good or bad connotation. They are merely differences, not unlike preferring LSU over Alabama. Go Tigers. Tools in recruiting generations Y and Z should be geared towards what these two generations value and what motivates them. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sam. That was really informative, and I feel like we have a good idea of the expectations of our younger workforce and emerging workforce from what you shared. That was really great. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Connie Stewart. who is going to give us a little bit of information about the work experience program. Connie?
Okay, so I want to talk about the youth work experience program. So we're looking for youth who are either in school, being high school or post-secondary, from the ages of 16 to 24. So I guess that's Generation Z, Sam. And so we really want to focus on teaching the young adult how to be the best employee for employers. We want to get young people engaged in the workplace, engaged in learning, whether that be attending post-secondary to gain some extra skills, or an apprenticeship program, or on-the-job training. You know, when we all got our first job and we all learned how to work, I went to college, but I didn't have an idea how to use my skills until I had my very first job. And then we all learned. So I think that one of the biggest benefits to our employers is that you can bring somebody in and mentor them and grow your own and make them the employee that you want them to be. Another benefit to work experience is that I feel like we're helping develop the skills of our future generation. You know, we're all responsible for, we don't want a generation of kids who are sitting on the couch and not involved in the workforce. Most of this population in Generation Z are just now graduating from college if they went to university. So we should be looking at that 20% of the total workforce number to significantly grow. So I really think our employers play a huge role in that, mentoring them. One of the great opportunities, I think, for the employers is that they can mentor these young people, but they don't have to pay any expenses to host the young person in their work site. We want to make it as easy as possible for any employer to mentor a young person. It is an investment of time. And we do want you to invest time in our younger generation. So to make that easier for you, it's no cost to the employer. You decide what the wage would be. So if you were going to hire someone tomorrow and that job paid $12 an hour, then we would employ them at Dyersburg State. They would become a temporary employee of ours. We would do a contract with them. We would provide workman's compensation coverage. The youth are on a monthly payroll cycle because all Dyersburg State employees are on a monthly payroll cycle. So we would pay all the wages, all the taxes, all the workman's compensation. All we really want is our employers just to mentor our young people. There's little paperwork for the employer. We're asking that you check their timesheets. Each youth will have a timesheet. We want you to sign a worksite agreement that says we're going to invest some time and we're going to mentor these young people and we're going to help grow them and develop them to be part of our workforce. And so they'll come with a monthly timesheet, and we also want them to learn how to accept some constructive feedback. So we've got a couple small evaluations to get them used to being part of, being evaluated by employers. So it's my personal favorite program. And we're really trying to get young people on a career path. We want to match their interests, their skills, and their abilities with an employer. So, we might have some youth who want to be in manufacturing. We would look to place them in manufacturing. We might have some that want to be in healthcare, and we would place them in healthcare. So whatever it is that they're interested in, of course, if they're interested in something that's not an in-demand occupation in our area, we're going to work with that young person to come up with some other options for them. So, but it's a really great program, and I really hope our employers are willing to take the time to invest in our young people. Thank you, Connie.
I think the biggest tagline to pull from that from an employer perspective, or a couple things, is, it's we pay the employees' wages and they receive the labor and the ability to grow that young person into that job. And so we've had a couple of employers who are joining us today, and follow up to kind of what Connie mentioned, who have participated in this youth work experience or young adult work experience program, and they have mentored a younger person into these careers. And so I want to give them an opportunity to kind of just provide their testimonial of what that experience looked like for them and how it benefited them. So today on my screen, I see Miss Seela Newble, and she is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction with the Dyersburg Schools. And she was a wonderful work site for an employee that we have. She provided a work site for a young adult named Kamisha Thompson. She was a teacher's assistant in 7th grade at Dyersburg Middle School through the program Connie just spoke about. And I'm going to just turn it over to Seela and just let her kind of share that experience with you from the employer perspective and what that would look like for other employers. So thank you, Seela, for joining us.
Thank you, Ginger. 6 years ago, Connie called me and asked me if I would be willing to take a placement at Dyersburg Middle School. I was the curriculum coordinator there at that time. And my first response was, sure, I'll take a good one. And so little did I know what a good one that I would get. Connie introduced me to Kamisha. She kind of explained the program to me and how that would work. And in Dyersburg City Schools, we are constantly looking for that next generation of teachers. We have a lot of our teachers who can retire within the next few years. And so we are constantly looking for those new young people who are interested in entering education. So Kamisha was just a perfect fit. She was a single mother of 3 children, and she had dropped out of University of Memphis after 3 semesters. She was working at Sonic here in town, and she really desired to get into education. And so we needed some help with one of our teams. We had a large number of students on that team. We had a lot of students with disabilities, and we didn't have any more money in our budget to hire additional personnel. And so really Kamisha came along at just the right time. So I placed her on a 7th grade team with Carol McCullough and Gina Walker, who are 2 fabulous ELA and math teachers that were there to mentor her and to help her along the way. And it was apparent from day one that she was going to make a great teacher. The first time I went down to check on her, she had a little group of students and she was working with them on math, and they were at the board and just doing all of those right instructional things to help children with math. And so she spent most of that school year there in our 7th grade team while she was continuing to work a job as well and take care of her children. And all along that process, she kept talking to me about wanting to go back to school and get her degree and to become a teacher. And so once she left us, she went to Dyersburg State and got her 2-year associate's degree. From there, she transferred to UT Martin and entered their educator prep program. All along the way, I stayed connected with her monthly. She would contact me and let me know how she was progressing, ask for advice. And so when she got to the point where she was ready to start her student teaching, we were able to place her at Dyersburg Middle School to do her student teaching. And so that was just a perfect fit. Miss Walker was at the point where she was ready to retire. And so Kamisha had started with Miss Walker. And so this year, after Miss Walker's retirement, we were able to hire her to be that 7th grade math teacher. So it has just been a wonderful, wonderful experience for our school system. And really the best part of it for me was being able to mentor that young person, to be able to invest in that next generation. I'm not too far from retirement, and we need to be thinking about who are those next people who are going to impact our next generation of children. You know, listening to Sam talk, I wrote down that 52%. That 52% in our community are kids that we've taught. And so we need to be investing in those people to have them that next generation of our workforce, whether it's with us as a teacher or whatever business industry or in our community. So I would encourage any employer who is considering being a part of this to definitely to jump in, because it's very much worth it.
Thank you so much, Seela. And I want to mention too, most of our work experiences, like Connie had talked about, we pay their wages, we pay their workers' comp, all of that's taken care of on our end. And they typically will work on a work site for 3 to 6 months, depending on, how much time they need to really get that work experience and the mentorship and to build their skills. And as Seela mentioned, they can return to school at the end of that or during that even to continue their education, and they're eligible for our programming already. So we assist them with scholarship dollars to do that, so that we remove that financial burden from that young person to be able to complete their education as well. So we continue to follow up with them throughout and through placement and employment at the end. So what a wonderful story. What a wonderful story. She is such a success, and some people on the call may actually know her as their child's teacher. So thank you so much for sharing that, Seela. I'm gonna flip over now we have Austin Mealer here. He is the owner of Austin Mealer's Restaurant Equipment Repair, and joining us as well is one of their previous work experience participants, John Ross Baker. He worked there in a work experience learning the HVAC and refrigeration side of the business. He came in without experience, so he was very green. Like I said, we added him to our payroll so that he could basically give that job a try, see if it was a good match for his skills and his interest, and was mentored there on site. And I'm going to just let Austin, if you want to kind of take off and just tell us how that experience worked for you guys, we would love to hear about it.
I kind of echo what she was saying, but the workforce today, like I say, the 52%, not just staying at home, and we struggle finding help because you don't have anybody that's coming out of trade schools or anything like that nowadays compared to what they were years ago. We just struggle finding those talented people. Excuse me. And so the only way I could find was to train them myself, to just bring them in. And with a small business, it's very hard to take on somebody. Then you're paying them to train them to do a job that they're watching you do. So with the workforce development, we've been able to come in and bring them in, 6 months and not have them on the payroll or have to pay the workers' comp, and be able to train those guys to one day, be in the field with us training or making a good living. And John Ross come in and he didn't have any experience whatsoever. And he came in without any kind of vocational school training, which, it's an option with us. We can take them right out of the school and build on them from there. And but he came in, he's had in mind to go to school, and he joined in and been training with us, and now he's in a truck. I'm not sure exactly how long he's been with us, but he's already out in his own truck running calls, and it's really worked out well for us, being that we didn't have to actually pay and struggle to have somebody just riding along in a truck training along with us.
It offsets your cost of training for him, certainly. John Ross, while you unmute, I want to give you an opportunity to just tell us from your perspective, from the work experience perspective, how did this impact you? How did it affect your career choice, and just kind of give us your experience?
Well, as far as my career choice, I always told my dad I wouldn't do what he does, but here I am. He does HVAC and electrical and stuff also. So but it definitely come at a time when I really needed it, like how the scholarship is set up and who's eligible. And when you get it, it picked me up when I was at a down point in my life. And it gave me a job, at a time where not very many people were hiring, especially not that type of job. I mean, I'd have been lucky to have a McDonald's job, but this gave me a really good opportunity and I was really thankful for it when it did come around.
How do you feel? How do you feel about the time that you had to learn the job? Do you feel like you had adequate time to really learn and absorb all you could about the HVAC and refrigeration? You've been participating in coursework there on site as well, correct?
Yes, ma'am, I have. We've been going over like basic electrical and refrigeration cycles and things like that. As far as the length, I thought the length was a great way. It's a good way to get your foot in the door. This field takes a good while to learn as far as like what you do, but it definitely gets you in there as far as who you need to talk to, who you need to see, and who you need to be around to be in this type of work.
I want to mention also, so John Ross completed 6 months of work experience, and then he rolled onto an on-the-job training grant program where we were able to offset half of his wages for another 8 weeks. And he has since been enrolled in their HVAC refrigeration apprenticeship program. So he is set up for a wonderful career in this field that he can do long-term and support a family. And so we just want to thank Austin too as well for providing that mentorship. He has opportunity to onboard others in the future through this program as well. So Austin, is there anything else you want to add just about your experience?
My experience is just, I echo again, it's just, I don't know what I would do without being able to bring these people on in a small business and have to train them myself. So the expenses of running a small business are really, really high. And, to bring people on that you actually have to put in there and ride along with you, it's been, it's very expensive on a small company. It's helped us grow and become a more successful company.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Austin, for sharing. And John Ross, thank you for being on the call as well. We're going to flip over to the question and answer. If there are any questions in the chat box, we'll answer those at this time. But I just kind of want to bring everything to a conclusion and kind of wrap up what we talked about and summarize what we talked about. So there are a lot of generational differences. We found that out with Sam's presentation. So that makes it more challenging for those of us who are incumbent workers in the workforce maybe to relate to those young and emerging folks who are coming up and entering the workforce. So we'll have to kind of cater our approach to benefit those young folks and to attract them into our businesses. We're at a time now where there's an abundance of job opportunities, and we're looking to recruit some of those untapped labor pools. So this is an excellent time in history to tap into those young folks in that emerging workforce and engage them or re-engage them with you as an employer. We have the work experience program that Connie's staff runs, which is very beneficial to employers and as far as offsetting cost. I think both of our employers on the call said we didn't have it in the budget. We didn't have it in the budget to bring someone else on, but we could really use the help. So if you're willing to take on someone who is maybe inexperienced in that career path but has a desire, they could be eligible for our program where we will pay their wages. They'll be our employee and you will be their work site, and you can mentor them and grow them and teach them in your chosen career field, your business, your practices, your way, and we'll kind of foot that bill for you. And it also allows that person interning to be paid a wage during that time, which is greatly beneficial to them as well. So, and like I said, typically 3 to 6 months. We pay the starting wage, whatever that would be for your job. So if a teacher's assistant pays $15 an hour, we'll pay them $15 an hour, whatever it is. I just use that example, but and so that's a wonderful opportunity. The commitment from the employer is that mentorship, that growth, providing a meaningful work experience where this young person can really get an idea and a grasp of that career and what would the expectations for that career field and kind of what a day-to-day life working in that job would be. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts, how it would all work and fit together. We have 2 business services representatives in Northwest Tennessee, Malia Evans and Lana Wood, and they would be your contact to kind of connect those dots. But that's really all we have today. Do we have anything in the chat? Jennifer, I know you are monitoring the chat for us today. Let's see. We will make Sam's presentation available to everyone at the conclusion of this call. So again, on our website at nwtnjobs.org, we will have the video of this presentation, of this webinar available, as well as Sam's presentation. We had a request for that PowerPoint presentation. We'll certainly make that available.
Ginger, we do have one question in the chat.
Right.
It's what marketing recommendations would John have for our team to reach students and young adults for these types of opportunities?
John Ross, you'll have to unmute yourself to share with us. Thank you.
Well, social media, I mean, with all these younger kids like me, social media is probably your best tool. That's how I figured it out. Like my mom come to me one day and we'd been on Facebook and she was telling me about this program she's seen that Austin Mueller's was offering and how good of a program it was. And so my advice would be social media. I mean, that's the biggest hook for my generation.
Thank you, John Ross. We had another question in the chat that was in reference to wages. It said, what kind of wage range do participants receive? And so the minimum that we will pay is $8.50 an hour currently at this time. But like I mentioned, we will base it on whatever the employer tells us is the starting wage for that job. So if the starting wage for an HVAC technician apprentice is $15 an hour, that's what the person on work experience would earn. If they tell us it's 12, that's what we would start the wage as. If it's 15, 16, 18 for a teacher assistant, that's the wage rate that we would pay for that position. I'm going to check and see if we have any other questions in the chat. Feel free, if you have questions, to pop those in the chat and we'll try to get them answered today. We're going to wrap up once those are answered. Okay, I don't see any more at this time. Well, I have one more about reverse referrals. So our program, the work experience program, can work in two ways. So you can come to us as an employer and say, these are the skills that this job requires. We're looking to mentor a young person into this job, and we can market and try to identify an emerging young adult for that position. Or as an employer, if you know of a younger person, that 18, typically even down to 16 to 24 years old for our work experience program, you can refer them to us and we'll just check and see if they're eligible for the position. So it can work both ways. We can market the position and reach out and search for those young folks for your jobs, or you can refer them to us. Austin, I don't remember, did you refer John Ross to us or did he come to us first?
I'm not sure. We reached out on Facebook, and I think he contacted us and we got him in touch with you guys. We were doing the social media marketing.
Right. So any way works. You can refer to us or we can look for youth and market for you. So as far as the employer side goes, either way is fine. I think y'all have referred several to us, Austin, over time, and we share your job listings and stuff like that on our social media as well. So it can work both ways. Jennifer, do you have anything that you would like to add? This is Jennifer Bain. She's joined as a panelist. She is our executive director with the Northwest Tennessee Workforce Board.
Hey, thanks, Ginger. I just want to say one of our other great sources of referrals has been word of mouth from our existing work experience participants. So we enjoy having you all on here to share your stories, and hopefully that helps with some other people. And we appreciate you all joining us today. Our next webinar will be in December. Is it the 2nd? Yes. 2nd at 9 a.m. and we will be talking about some labor market information and some tools that are available to our employers through our programs. So we hope we'll be able to join us then, and we'll see you then.
Thank you.